Alright, let's go inside.
Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to do some more piercings. That's what I'm into at the moment. I've got a couple of designs here which I've done. Sort of an octopus sort of design and one that's straight. These are all sycamore, all these. So the difference between these ones and the other ones is I haven't done any pyrography on the insides. But before we get to the design, we've got to make a bowl. So, got a piece of sycamore here. This came from a school near me. And from 2 years ago or so. So first off, we're just going to stick this on. And I'm probably going to cheat on this one a little bit. I'm just going to put a recess on this lip here so I can flip it around, and then that way I don't need to put the cold jaws on to grab the edge or glue block. So it should fit on these same jaws on these dovetails. So we'll get into it. It flipped around here, so I got the tail stock in here just giving me a bit of support while I balance off this edge here, get it re-trued. And then I'll take this re-true in here, and then I'll put the little recess in there for the jaws. Alright, now I'll just test fit that. Hopefully it fits. Should do. Didn't measure it. Get the right key here. There we go. This will save me a lot of time. As I now want to measure how much material I've got in the bottom here, just so I can see how much of a foot. See on this one here, it's got quite a bit of a foot. It's about maybe a third or so. It's probably about what you want. See this one here is probably about a third too on that foot, maybe a little bit more. So yeah, to measure the depth, if you haven't seen me do this before, I bring the tail stock up. So I just use a spanner here. It's just a couple millimeters thick, probably 3, maybe 4. So I just do it on there. So that's basically the bottom of the bowl once the tail stock is up there. So that's your measurement. So you lock that down, and you draw a little pen line, vivid down here. See, I've got vivids, and that gives you the bottom. So now when I stick the bowl back in, and I go up, I can see I've got this much material here. So you can see the bottom thickness I got when I first turned this green, and plus that first cut I did there. It's about just under 30mm. So it's probably 30mm when I first did this green, which is just over an inch, inch and a quarter or something like that. So now I know I've got about an inch I can do on the bottom there before I run into the bottom. I do have the tenon on here too, but that's going to disappear basically because it's out around. So now I can flip this around back on the chuck here. So now you can actually measure out how far you want to go inside. So I said about an inch, 30mm is what I got about here. 25mm, I'm going to say 25mm, which is just over an inch. So I can now mark that out on the bowl. I can say that's where the foot's going to go into. So when I do sort of the bead sort of cuts going in, so when I do these cuts going in, I know where I'm going to on this now. Mark that out on there. Even though I'm going to true this up, I can remark because I've still got that measurement down there. So I'm just going to re-true this up and then we'll start doing the foot. So now I've got this re-trued up. There's a couple of ways you could go about doing the depth. You could drill it with your tailstock and the drill in there, or you could just use a ruler and just go in there and eyeball it down the parallel line. And when it comes to the foot size, what you want to do is you want to also make that about a third of that. So yeah, you want to measure it from the final sort of width you're going to have your bowl, which is sort of the edge there, aligned with this edge here, which is about 220mm, or about 8 3/4 inches, 220mm. So about a third of that is about 74mm, 3mm, something like that. So what you do is you take that number I just said, we'll make it 74 so it's easy to halve. So half of 70, what's that? That's 35. So you want 35, so you got 39mm on either side. About there. So that's going to be my foot diameter. That's how far deep the foot's going to go. So now I've got those lines, so I can hollow out this inside bit to the depth. Like I say, there's a few ways you can find that depth. You can just use anything. You use a pen, you can just eyeball up on the side here, straight on top of the lathe, and you can see how deep you go just by taking it out and seeing. So I'll do some more turning now. Alright, time for some more cheating. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a little dovetail on this foot, and then my jaws on my other chuck here will have something to grip onto, because at the moment that's just a curve and these will just slip out. So I just need to put a little recess in there, and then I can flip this around again. that's all I should really need, as long as I'm not too aggressive when I follow the inside of the bowl. Don't try this if this is your first bowl you're going to do. So I've actually made that recess a little bit. Oh no, just wasn't in it. So there we go now. And then when you turn it around, you don't want to over tighten it, because it will just explode that foot you just made. But that's why, I mean, and sycamore is pretty good. It's pretty sturdy wood. I wouldn't do this with any punky wood. I wouldn't do that. Alright, so now I can take it off this chuck here. Chuck on. Just make sure that it looks properly. Yeah. Just check that that fits again. True. Now same thing again for the depth. So we're going to find the final depth here. We shouldn't be too far away from here to the original measurement. So what we're going to do, like I said, we're going to have that spinner there, so we stay that firm. That's going to be like basically the thickness of the bowl. So we need to take that into account, and then we need to measure basically from this shoulder here that we've made to the bottom here. We can just sort of eyeball that. I'm going to say about 18 millimeters or so. Let's say less actually, because you know, once you go to the middle, I've got this little cone here just for, you know, a little bit of design. So I'm actually going to say 15 millimeters. So we just need to do this. Bring the tailstock back up. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure roughly 15 millimeters away. Bring you guys over so you can see. About 15 millimeters away, and that's roughly where it is now. And I'm already on that same line there, so I can basically just go to that line again, leave this locked in, and that'll be my depth there. So I can stick the bowl on. Remember, you don't want to over tighten this too much because you'll crack that foot you just made. You just want to give it a nice little sort of snug, and another little sort of couple little tweaks, and that's it. Pretty true. So now if we bring the tailstock back up, you can see, oh, we've got about finger width, so I could have gone a bit deeper on that foot actually. But that's alright, I'm just going to carry on. So now I'm going to take about a finger width out of the bowl without hitting the bottom, going through the bottom. So, alright, got you turned around here now. Now I can turn this bowl to final depth now that I have the line down here set, so I can figure out where I'm going. So basically I'll just eyeball the first where I can reach my fingers around, and then where you can't, that's when the tailstock comes in with that measurement at the bottom. But I know I can take about a finger width off. So that's just basically like the whole width of this chisel. So let's get to it. just before I get too carried away, I'm just going to do the outside edge again, just so that it's nice and true. It's running pretty good, but it's only ever so slightly out. When you get to the thin edge, it ends up looking quite out. Alright, so now I've got the outside trued up and I've got the bottom all set, the bottom measurement. I can now do my final passes. So I like to finish the outside thickness first, the top of the bowl I should say, because otherwise if you do the whole thing thin, the outside starts getting a bit wibbly wobbly and you get a lot of chatter and it's not a nice experience. So yeah, I will do a couple passes down here, but I will leave the bottom thick until end. Getting close now, I just want to check the bottom thickness. What we're doing is we're lining up with that front line there. So you just bring the tailstock up and you can see I'm still got a bit to take out. Well, I think I've got pretty much the first sort of third of it done. Just need to take a little bit more out. Alright, I think I'm pretty much there. Alright, so I got it all sanded up now to 400 grit. And so now what we need to do is mark out for this pattern. I'm going to do this one, the straight one. So basically, using the index on the back of the chuck here. So yeah, I'm just using the index on the back of the chuck here. It's a 24 index. Yeah, 24 index. So I'm just going to use every second one, and that's going to make me 12 cuts, 12 lines to follow. So if we come back around the other side, just got my little platform here, and it's important just to make sure it's on center, because if it's not, it's going to offset the lines off the center, so they're not going to be all, it's going to look more like a spiral rather than all the lines going into the middle. So what I got is I got the first one there marked out, and I'm just going to draw a line all the way through. And then all I'm going to do is, see, I've got my dividers here, and so this is going to be the bit that gets cut out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark a circle on the bowl, and then with the dividers on this intersection here, I'm just going to go above it. I'll make this one slightly bigger, I think. to go above it, mark it, and then come back down to when your pencil meets that mark and just transfer it all the way down. Just like that. And then on the inside, I'm just going to have another circle so you can see where these two lines sort of meet up, and getting sandpaper and the burrs and various things in there is quite hard, so I like to leave that little circle there at the middle. See, like this one here, so the burrs can only get in so tight. So we probably want it about, I reckon about there. And now if we come around to where our first mark was, this is the bit that's going to get cut out. So I'll just mark that like that. And I will do another ring up here on the rim to get this top mark here. And then another one on here. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip one of the indexing marks and go every second one. And then you only need to start from that circle there, come out, all the way through, and then same thing again, get the calipers out and just on that intersecting line. Put a little mark, come down to where the mark is on the table there. And just like that. And I do like to scribble what is going to get cut out, just so you can follow where you're going. You can already see, so that's going to get cut out, that's going to get cut out. Just mark all this out and we'll come back then. Alright, I've got that all marked out now. I just had to stick a piece of plywood in behind here so I could bring the bowl out to do that last little ring there and bring some of these lines across. Now I've got all that done, all that marking out done. You can see I've got that line there that I'm going to, and that line there. So you can see I'm going to take all this. I'm going to take all of this out here to this line here, and then yeah, there'll be a little, once you cut through, there'll be a little hole there, and that will be taken out as well. So that's enough over here at the lathe. Let's go over to the bench and start cutting out these shapes. Alright guys, so we're over here at the bench with the bowl that's all marked out where it all needs to be cut. And I thought I'd just talk about some of the bits I use for cutting out on the journal. I was using drill bits snapping off the top piece and just using the bottom and putting a three-sided point on it, but I found it's a bit short really, and it's they're a bit hard to sharpen on the drill, because once you put them in there it's quite close to the edge. And I've got these other bits that I've tried to sharpen, and these are like the drywall cutout bits. There's like a spiral groove on them, and they've actually got a thicker web. So in the middle of the drill bit right here is thicker than your standard drill bit. This bit here, the web, see that's only very small, and on this one it's got a lot bigger web. I don't know how well you can see that, but which means you can sharpen the tops of them without them snapping so much, because if you do it with a drill bit they just snap. So I've actually been putting using those cut off bits and just making that 3-sided, and I found that works very well. And for the sharpening of the bits, I'll just stab myself. For the sharpening of the bits, I've got a little jig here for the drill. There's these 3 holes in the drill for the locking wrench for it, and I've just used an old drill bit, I think it was a 6mm, and it fits these holes, so I can stick the drill in that hole and it won't rotate. And I can also stick the bits in any orientation I want. So when it comes over to the grinding wheel, I can stick this on the little platform, this whole little base, and then you just find that little pin on the hole, and now this can't rotate. And for when you originally sharpen these, you don't need to worry about positioning, you just do that one face. But for resharpening, you just hold that up there, and that flat side will just find the flat side of the wheel. Then I just hold it there and just twist the back of the drill, which tightens it, and now I can sharpen that, and it's on the same angle. And then turn. And that's all it is to the sharpening of these. Now you can do a 6.1, but there's not 6 holes on this, and I think 3 works pretty good. Especially when you can find the same bevel again, just by, you saw how it did that. So you get it in that pin first, and you just take this out. So you can see those are all single faceted size. So you do is you put it in the drill, just use your thumb or your finger, and you can just rock it back and forth until you feel it hit that flat. Tighten up the back of the drill, and there you go. And there you go. So that's just how I sharpen them. We'll come back over here, and I'll show you me cutting out some of these. Alright, I've got that same bit now in the Dremel, just in the flex shaft here, and I'll just do max speed on that. I've just got my little vacuum down here, just comes up, you can see that little hole down there, and so that all the dust goes in there mainly. Also got my other vent up here, goes outside, it's mainly for pyrography though. So I think I'll show you cutting one of these out, and yeah, and it's important to scribble the ones you're cutting out, because I almost did it once, I almost went the wrong way. So I'll show you cutting out one. So there you see, I got the first one cut out. I always find it easiest when you're doing this is you start in there and you just come down and use the drill bit as a straight line. And I always stay away from the line a little bit, and then I'll come back with the burr and I'll clean it up. So I'm just going to carry on cutting all these out and then I'll come back. Alright, got all those cut out now, all those triangles. I am going to make these holes come slightly further in than I did before, because it's important to make them wide enough so a hacksaw blade can go through there. I'll show you why that's important later on. But I'm just going to use one of these burrs here, and I'm just going to clean up all these bits, and I'm going to make these slightly in further. So there you go, got one of them cleaned up now, this one here. I'm not sure if I'm going to go any further than that now, but if I do, I'll just use one of these finer burrs to get in there. You guys have seen probably enough of that. I'll just come back once I've cleaned up all of these, and then I'll show you how I sanded up all those inside bits. Alright, so I got all those bits cleaned up, got it all more straightened out, and just for when I do these inside bits in here, I just use this little burr here, and I just come in this way, and I just take very little cuts and just backwards and forwards all the way up to that line. And just do that all the way around. But now I've got all that finished, I'm going to show you the little secret I got for sanding those straight bits. Here's my little sander I made. It's just a little wooden handle with a slit in it. I just used my handsaw for that. And it's basically just two hacksaw blades. I've ground the teeth off it so it's not going to cut me or anything like that. And it's just a piece of sandpaper, and that sandpaper is just slightly over 4 widths of a hacksaw blade. And to put it together, just move that out of the way. Find the middle of it. Bend it over, fold it in half like that, so you can see it's a little sandwich. The tighter you can get it, the better. And I like to have it so that none of the hacksaw blades poking out the end, and then you just, with that little groove, just slide it in there. And that's it. Now I can sand all these bits here, I can just come along and that'll give me a nice straight line once I sand all that up. And the same thing for the insides. This just goes through this little gap here, and then I'm able to sand right up into those corners and get a nice sharp edge. And same thing with the bottom. If it's wide enough, you can use just the bottom of it like this, or if it's a real skinny gap that you've done in there, you could just use the edge. Or on my last one I actually had to make a different block because it's too close, and I was a bit worried about widening out that hole, so I just used a little piece of wood and just use that to square up the edges. But you could just do this as well, use it like that to square up the edges. But yeah, basically that's all that's to it. I like to stick my finger sort of halfway up because it is a little bit still bendy, and then just as you can see, it's real good for getting into those little spots. And this is just some 180 grit, and I usually go until I don't see any tear out from the burr I've been using, and have it nice and straight. And then once I've got one area done, I'll just stick one of these little earbuds in the one that's finished, and then you just go all the way around until it's finished. So I don't think you guys need to see too much of the sanding. As you can see, the hacksaw blade just goes in there. I'm just using 180 grit, and I'll probably sand it up to 240. Alright, I'll come back once I got it sanded. Alright, so I got all the sanding finished. Got the 240 on the inside of these, 240 grit. And I thought I'd just show you this again. I've got the sandpaper slightly wedged in that wood there, just so it grips it from pulling out. And when you want to put a new piece in there, or your first piece, you want something that's in between 3 times, 4 times the size of one of these. So you can stick it on halfway and fold it over. If you have it more than 4, you end up with it creasing up when you fold it over. If you have more than overlapping there and then the other side comes over, it's all going to crease up in there. So you want it about 3 to 4 times. And then you can just stick them in, fold the edges over, fold it in half, and stick it back in here. And yeah, I like to stick it in the sandpaper in that first little bit, and once it gets worn out you can always just chop it a little bit shorter, you know, it's only wood. But for now it holds it nice and tight in there so you can't pull the paper out. So that's enough of that. That's what sanded all these inside areas. And then I just took it over to the lathe and put it in the cold jaws, and with light pressure I just sanded it with 400 grit just to get rid of the pencil lines on it and any of the little fluffies from the sanding and stuff like that. So now it's ready for the finish. I just signed it and put sycamore on it before I do all the oil and stuff, just because it's sometimes when you put the oil on and then try and sign it with the pyrography pen, sometimes it just all smokes up and makes a mess and it doesn't look very nice. So that's why I like to sign it, and I put the tree species on there as well before I do the finish. So with the finish I like to use tung oil, doesn't really matter what brand as long as it's natural, 100%. And then I like to thin it down with some isopropyl alcohol just for the first coat. and then I'll just brush it on. So I'll just let that soak in for a few minutes now, that first coat, and then I'll come back. Alright, it's been a few minutes. Now I'm just going to dab off the excess with just some rags. These are just lint free ones that I've got lying around. Just go around and get rid of all that excess. You can see it brings out the grain and all the colour once you put the oil on. And because you thin it down, or because I thin it down, it's a lot easier for all the oil to soak in, so there's not so much excess to rub off, because it actually soaks in rather than just sitting on the top slowly soaking in, so a lot less there to wipe off. So that's basically the first coat of the oil done. You can let that harden overnight and do another coat, or you could just wait a little bit and wax it, and that's probably what I'm just going to do. The more oil you put on it, the more shiny you get it, and the more you can fill all the grain. But that takes sort of days doing that sort of carry on. So I'm just going to come back in probably half an hour or so, and I'm going to wax this. Alright, it's been a half hour or so. Don't know if you can really tell. It looks like all that oil is sort of seeped in, no excess. So for waxing, you can use, there are various products you can use. For example, I've got Canuba wax here, I've got some burr wax here. I found you have to tape on the lids, otherwise they pop off. This stuff's really good, but it's not food friendly, as in it's got fumes and stuff in it. And then I've got this one here. This is some antique beeswax, or you can just get some cheap beeswax, just by the kg. I think on this one I might actually use the burr wax, because I don't think anyone's going to actually plan on eating out of this one, quite frankly. And if a bit of fruit's in there, I don't think that's going to hurt it. It's only really if you've got a liquid in this stuff. As you can see, there's a few hazards on there. So what I'll actually do with this stuff is I'll use a little scouring pad. It's a super fine, it's like a 4-0. I mean, you could just use steel wool, some fine steel wool for this, but I like to get some on there and just rub it in. So before I apply wax on the outside, because I'm actually using this bit as a bit of a handle, is I'm going to wax the inside, because otherwise I'm just going to get a wax hand. And for you there to watch me before, you know what this wheel is. It's just I've got some cotton wheels here. They're just sandwiched between two washers on a sanding mandrel. The normal polished wheels you got are these sort of ones here, these felt. I mean, they're great and all, but they take a while and they burn out pretty quick, and this is what I've got. So I'm just going to polish all this in on this one side, and the way I like to keep track is I like to put this somewhere, and then I'll just start on either side of it and I'll just go all the way around until it's done. So I thought I'd just stop there and show you. Let me just get the light in the right place. So I was waxing this one here. And can you see how if it's shinier and you can see a bit more of that grain? You can sort of see it there. See how there's that shine on it? There isn't on this one. So I'll just go around and do all that. I'll probably speed it up for you all. Here we are, all done. Pretty cool, eh? The wax gave it a nice good gloss on it. You can see there's quite a bit of joints and all that sort of stuff in this piece. So yeah, a piece of sycamore, came out pretty cool. Piece of sycamore, came from one of the local schools. They just chopped it all up for firewood. They were just getting rid of the tree. I got a phone call to go grab a whole bunch of wood, just make a video about it. And here's one of the pieces finished. You saw those other couple pieces too. Yeah, pretty cool. Let me know what you think. Got any ideas what I should do next? More piercings or segmented work or bowls? So yeah, thanks for watching.